All right. All right. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate you showing up. I've got to add to my list of speaking notes to myself, never follow the guy from Lego. That was a really cool presentation. And I love that last bit where he talked about the fact that the power of crowds is that the creativeness that crowds can bring you is so much greater than the creativeness of the individual. It really resonates with me, and it's something that we're going to talk a little bit about. I've been asked to speak about this topic of how do you transform organizations to be continued disruptors. That's really been my job and the job of many of us at IBM over the last 4 or 5 years, is to take this amazing organization, but to change it so that we once again disrupt ourselves. But unlike past disruptions, where we changed what we worked on, this one requires us to change how we work. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about this notion of how do I think, at least the things I've learned over my career, how do we make organizations into organizations that will continually disrupt themselves? And this scale's large and small. It starts with a very simple concept. We want to create bold outcomes that our users love. It's very simple. We want to create bold outcomes that our users love. That's something that when I started my first company by myself and then hired the first employee who became my partner, and then we hired the third and then grew from there, that's all we really wanted to do. Create bold outcomes that people loved. Today, there's one additional requirement that we all have to pay attention to. And that's that we have to do this at the pace of our nimblest competitor. We have to instill in our teams an ability to move faster than ever before. And again, this is not just something for IBM. It's not just something for big enterprises. It's something for every company that I visit today, from the smallest startup to the largest organization. You have a competitor that's moving faster than you, and you know it. You may or may not know who they are. And probably, if you're the CEO, you're worried about the fact that you're moving too slow. Even if you are generating great outcomes, you're not doing it fast enough. And so today, what I want to share with you are what I think are the 3 keys to creating bold and fast outcomes all the time. Now, it's interesting. When we started this program at IBM, we started it based on some things that I had done at my previous startup and some things that we had done in a relatively small division at IBM of about 1,000 people. That's small. And they worked. And then when our chairman, Jenny Rometty, became CEO in late of 2011, but in early 2012, she asked, whatever we did in this group, can we now do it everywhere? And we started with this notion of adding designers, and we knew we would have to add formally trained designers at a scale that had never before been done. At the time, we had a target of about 1,000. Since then, over the last 4 years, we've hired 1,600 professionally trained designers, about 2/3 direct from university. We now have about 44 studios around the world. But in those early days, it was very interesting what we learned, because we had built this program around the notion of empowering those teams, like we saw in the previous photograph, to move fast. We built this program to provoke the skeptics, to get them out from under their rocks, and to get their mindsets changed into this bold, user-centered world. And what we found is that there was no friction. There was no skepticism, or it was hidden. And we found the very first of the lessons that we've learned that were non-obvious. In order to move fast, the single biggest thing that's probably missing in an organization is the ability to actually make fast decisions. We had found that this whole world of agile and design thinking had pushed decisions to the edge. It was a very decentralized approach. It was an approach that empowered teams at the edge, but we did not put in systemic ways for decisions to get made fast at the edge. It may be that we didn't empower people. It may be that we still had gates of processes in place. But most often what we found is that we didn't have all of the inputs that were required to make a decision in the room at the right time. We were still operating functionally. We were still operating in silos of cultures. If we had a team of engineers, they were practicing agile. And so were the designers doing design sprints, agile. And the people in Shanghai were doing agile, and the people in RTP in Raleigh were doing agile, and the people in Dublin were doing agile. But they weren't talking to each other. So we had conflicts. And so today, we are much more intentional about making sure that our teams are formed from the outset with as diverse a set of people and skills as possible. We ensure that every type of voice is in the room. This was very new for us, and it requires constant vigilance to make sure that we're always putting the right people in the room at the right time, at the outset of the project. We also found that the broader set of people, I hate this notion. I think one of the worst memes that's ever gone out around certainly software development is this notion that a team should be no bigger than a team that 2 pizzas feed. Very few things get in this world with teams that small. They may build the thing, but they don't market it, they don't price it, they probably don't sell it. And so one of the impediments to making fast decisions is getting the alignment of the broader set of stakeholders that it actually takes to get something to market. And so we instituted a thing called playbacks. And playbacks are a safe space where for that period of time, multiple different stakeholders from different silos of the organization and different hierarchical levels can all come together and be peers for the moment of the playback. The only thing that matters is the work and the voice of the user. And finally, we worked a lot around empathy. We worked a lot around instilling this mindset shift of user-centeredness, of human-centeredness. But what we found is that we started having arguments about who knew the user best. And we realized that the fundamental way that teams misbehave is because they don't trust one another. And so we've shifted our focus on empathy just a little bit. And we talked to our teams about developing empathy with one another first, and then with our user. The second thing that we found is that a lot of companies put in place innovation programs that are others. They build an innovation center in Silicon Valley. They build an innovation center in Austin, Texas. And time, after a year or 2 or 3 years, we find that the innovations coming out of that team haven't grafted into the broader organization. And so the second learning that we've had is that you can't divorce innovation from ops. You have to marry the two very, very deeply. It's all about ops. In fact, we think that if you're not working on production systems and with production systems, you're just playing around. And so we spent almost 2 years merging together our approach to design thinking with our approach to Agile and our approach to DevOps. It's very hard work. It's very gorpy work. It's very frustrating work, especially for designers, because it seems to slow you down. But what it really does is give you a shot at creating a legacy. because the only way a company sustains anything is through process. If you're not married to the production process, you will not survive over the long haul. You won't survive a leadership change. You won't survive a management change. You won't survive a budget cut time unless you're deeply embedded in the operations of the company. The other thing that we've learned is that it's very important to have the spaces where we do this work actually in our environment. Again, I see a lot of companies, and we were certainly under a lot of pressure at the beginning of our program to go do a cool thing. Go build a cool space. Back then, we didn't have a place in New York City like we have today at Astor Place. And I was told to go do something cool in Soho. Go to San Francisco and do something south of Mission. Go into Austin. And by the way, a cool space means it's got brick walls and it's got exposed ductwork. And we intentionally didn't do that. I wish I could show you the spaces that we actually demolished. They were actually the spaces that I was moved to when I was acquired into IBM. And they looked like spaces built to kill creativity and innovation. And so we built our studios right there on the campus, in the same building with the engineers, and we invited them in. And today we have 44 IBM studios around the world. We've got 9 IBM garages that are co-located studio-type spaces in places like WeWork and Galvanize. And we've got about 100 or 150 what we call agile workspaces, which basically means they're not client-facing workspaces that are all built using this same language. The third learning I've had is this. I'm asked all the time, how do you get the VP of design? Do you need a chief design officer? Everybody talks about power as if a position is what's important, as if the ability to mandate something is important. What we've found is not only is it not important, it probably hurts the cause. And the path we've pursued, and I think it's been a big part of our success, is to stop thinking about power as something exercised and power as a seat at the table, as the power to listen to everything interesting. And so we have moved along a path of what we call many seats at many tables. And I'll give you a little bit of the behind the scenes of how we do that. The first thing we did was the hard work of working with our HR systems. This is one thing that's much easier in small companies than big ones. But we created a career ladder for our designers, these people that we're bringing into the company, that mirrored a career ladder that you would see for engineers, for example. And it has very specific growth. And at that mid-career level, it begins to do something very interesting. It recognizes that design is a technical craft, and if a person wants to go deep into the craft as their career, they can move into our executive ranks and all the way up to IBM Fellow as a formally trained designer. And we named our first one this year. We also recognize that there's a business leadership role to be played by these people that have amazing mindsets, growth mindsets, design mindsets. And so there's a track, I guess, all the way up to CEO for business leaders. And at the end of the day, that's probably one of the things that I'm proudest of with respect to our design program is the amount of business leadership that we're seeing out of our designers. We spend a lot of time working on alignment. We instill this design mindset across all of IBM. We call that IBM design thinking. We have recently, over the last year or so, created a digital way as well as a qualitative way to evaluate a person's career as a design thinker at IBM. We now have over 90,000 badged IBM design thinkers, and about a third of that population has achieved their badge through qualitative means at higher levels above the entry. The way that we've actually think about this many seats at many tables kind of tactically and organizationally is what we're showing here. And this shows you how we've started the program, how we've built it, and where we still have to go. We started very small. We started in 2013 with just 7 teams. You know, one of the things that we've never done is evangelize design or design thinking as an abstract concept. And we've never just enabled design thinkers, certainly haven't enabled designers at IBM. We've always worked with the team. The team is the atomic level of work in today's environment. It's not the process anymore, it's the team in this collaborative world. And so we started with these teams. We started in 3 groups. We started at the very lowest level, very organically across 3 of our areas. We've got more divisions than this, but these are the fundamental areas of the company. And we began to put in place some management in that very first year. Over the second year, we started to add executive level support in our products areas as well as in our services area, and we introduced design into our HR team. The next step of maturity was about a year and a half ago when we named our first IBM Fellow as Vice President. We've now instantiated about 18 executives across the business at IBM, across our products and services area. And over the course of this past year, we've added executive support in our HR and CIO areas, and we've begun introducing design thinking as a way for our salespeople to actually change the way we engage with our clients from day one. As we become a company that's embraced this design mindset in everything that we do on the delivery side, we're now becoming a company that embraces it in everything that we do, in every interaction that we have with our clients. This notion of transforming organizations to be continual disruptors is a fascinating journey to be on. I think that it rests on these 3 keys that I've talked about. Yes, you can bring in design. Yes, you can bring in design thinking, agile, lean startup. There's any number of methods or frameworks that you can choose. But I will tell you that if you do these 3 things really, really well, you've probably put in place the kind of organization you want. Smart, swift decision-making and the institutional tools to enable it. Embedding everything you do in real operations and not treating it as an other. And distributing that capability as far and wide as you possibly can. At the end of the day, if you do that well, maybe your CEO will get up and say something like this at South by Southwest. Design thinking is at the center of everything we do at IBM. Thank you very much.